Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We have been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today it is May 20th, 2025. That is 5 years and 2 months of Torah every single day, of finding friends from all over the world to make sure that we have a chance to start the day together, to say good morning to each other. And as Penny has been a diligent timekeeper for us, daykeeper for us. She's letting us know, thank you, my friend, that we are on broadcast 1307. Susie, it's good to see you, sending love to Toronto. Hi, Tsiona. Hope that you are well. Linda, sending love to Florida. Rosa, how are you? Jerry, happy birthday. Rosa, I'm glad you knew that, so you could remind all of us. Jack and Barry, Boker Tov, hope that you are well. Hi, Andrew. Let's see who else is here so we can say good morning to each other, and then we'll take a breath, learn some Torah. Karen, Boker Tov, good to see you. Amy and Ashley, Debbie and Lydia, Boker Tov. Let's see who else is there. Joyce, good to see you too. Lydia and Carl, Tara, Boker Tov. Arlene, Boker Tov to you. And I think who reminded us, Rosa knew that it was Jerry's birthday too, so she already wished a happy birthday. Now we get to do it from his sister. Happy birthday, Jerry. Natalie and Carol, good to see you. All right. Friends, let's take a breath, sing a bracha, we'll learn some Torah. Ya la 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 la, diddy I la la la, diddy I la 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 la, I la la la, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah la'asok b'divrei Torah Hafoch ba והפוך בה לעסוק בדברי תורה. Diddy I lie 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 lie, diddy I lie lie lie, diddy I lie 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 lie, I lie lie. So good morning to everyone. I'm coming to you live from Chicago, where I am part of the iCenter's gathering with rabbinical students and graduate students from all over the world, certainly the United States and Israel. It is a blessing to be part of a group of passionate Jewish educators focused on Israel and focused on the core of being human, which in the philosophy of the iCenter is very much tied in to what Zionism represents. Self-determination means being human and being free to being human. It is broadcast 1307. It is day 592 since October 7th. There's a lot to talk about. Let's look at one verse from this week's Parsha. In Vayikra, Leviticus, which we are at the end of somehow, chapter 26, verse 26. I'll read the Hebrew and the English. It's a very powerful verse. I'll ask you to think as I read it about the ways that it might apply to our memories, to inherited trauma, and to the reality in parts of the world today. B'shivrei lachem, when I break bread, mateh lechem, v'afu eser nashim lach mechem b'tanur echad, 10 women shall bake bread in a single oven. V'hishivu lach mechem b'mishkal, they shall dole out the bread, rationing it so that everyone would have some. V'achaltem v'lo tispa'u, you will eat it but not be satisfied. Clearly this is not a happy verse. And among the things to know about the double parsha that we read this week, Behar-Bechukotai, is that there are blessings and curses, promises and threats. If we listen, if we act appropriately, then we will inherit great blessing, including the land. And if we do not, as it says elsewhere in the Torah, we lose the land, meaning the land doesn't eternally belong to us, nor is it inherently holy. The land is the testing ground, as Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel pointed out in his book Israel, An Echo of Eternity. It's the testing ground to see, once Jews have the chance to make decisions, the responsibilities of self determination, will we be worthy of the land we have fought so hard to have? And it's a very big question for us because ultimately, with great responsibility comes great power. That was channeled by Stan Lee when he placed it into the words of Spider Man's uncle, and then in the movies, in the words of his aunt. Yes, as Rosa said, very straightforward, actions have consequences. Among the consequences listed is the one that we just read from chapter 26 of Vayikra, which says, if you do not act appropriately, even if you have enough, it will not be satisfying. And it's the reverse of the command in the Torah to say Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after eating a meal. There we say, V'achalta v'savata uberachta, you shall eat, be satisfied, and then make a blessing, the command for Birkat Hamazon. Here it says, even if you make food, you will not feel that you had enough. And that is, of course, terrible to hear. It is a terrible, terrible thing to hear. And there's actually a story that I'll tell you in advance. It's not a gentle story, but Yafa Eliach, who's a famous storyteller, especially around the period of time in the Shoah, writes this story about being at a bat mitzvah with someone, and this is what happened. A waiter came to the table with a basket of bread. Yafa was sitting with someone named Tula. Tula closed her eyes, inhaled the aroma of the freshly baked bread. She passed the basket to me, Yafa Eliach says, without taking any, and she said, you know, in camp, I used to dream that one day I would marry a baker, and in our house there would always be an abundance of bread. For this basket of bread, another woman across the table said, you could buy in camp all the jewelry you see at this bar mitzvah. Once in Bergen-Belsen, I exchanged a diamond ring for a thin slice of white bread. The bread on the table was still untouched. The waiter came again to the table. Ladies, I see that you are not hungry today. Not today, replied Tula, and not ever again. The waiter was about to remove the bread. Leave it on the table, said the other woman. There's nothing more reassuring in this world than having a basket of freshly baked bread on the table in front of you. I share this with you because it's a heavy story. And this Parsha, yes, as Susie is suggesting, by talking about Shemitah and the way that we treat the land, is also talking about the reward for treating the land and each other with the kind of reverence this Parsha demands for the land. What does it mean to require replenishment? What does it mean to act ethically with the power that we wish we didn't need? Zionism truly could be understood as the ethical use of power we wish we didn't need. And among the challenges that come with self-determination is what David Ben-Gurion defined as us becoming normal. He said the reason for Israel is so that Jews can become normal. And what does normal mean? He defined it as a Jewish criminal brought before a Jewish judge. And yes, that's pretty normal. But when we act with our power in ways that include criminals in our midst, which is what Ben-Gurion believed becoming normal would include, and when we are on the land and we do not always act with moral sensibility, the consequences in this week's Parsha are drastic, as opposed to the story that Yafa Eliach shares, where bread was taken from us. We were deprived of nourishment. Here we are, friends. Here we are, friends. And I want to amplify Adrian's question. She said, I find myself asking, how are we measuring up? We are fighting for our lives and have been for 592 days. And we do not have our beloveds, 58 human beings stolen by Hamas on the day that they started this war. The war would end immediately if they gave our loved ones back to us. It would end. There would be no appetite for this war. In some extreme elements in our people, yes, there would. But among the challenges that we must face head on is the imperative in this week's Parsha to make sure that in our use of food, nourishment reaches those who are hungry. And is that our responsibility primarily? No. But we are the ones with power. We asked for it. We demanded it of history. We fight for it. And when threatened, we respond with ferocious power, as we should. But when it comes to bread, bread and what it means, even the ancient sages in Pirkei Avot, thousands of years after the Torah, said this very famous quote, Im ein kamach ein Torah. If you don't have bread, there's no Torah. That's understood later to mean if you don't make a living, you won't be able to learn Torah. But at its very basic level, we have the responsibility as a self-determining people to act ethically with the power we wish we didn't need. And because of the terrible, terrible wounds, incalculable losses, on the worst day since the Shoah in our homeland, and in its aftermath, where we are fighting, but the strategy has been very hard to understand. And the politics surrounding the confusing strategy or lack thereof is very hard to understand. And the way global power has been shifting is very hard to understand. And the fact that Eden Alexander was released without Israel's involvement is very hard to understand. And the use of American power and international diplomacy and the internal domestic politics that are roiling Israeli society right now, it's very hard to understand. But we do understand. We do understand that the Torah is calling us to use our power ethically, and in this parsha, especially when it comes to food. We know that when we are hungry, and I am grateful that I don't know from real hunger. I have been hungry, but I don't know hunger. I fast on Yom Kippur, but that's a fast of choice. I could always eat. We know that the sages understood that without Torah, without food, Torah won't be effective in the world. It won't be able to think straight. Inspiration is harder to feel when you are really hungry. How, in this parsha, can we understand the verse that 10 women will make bread in one oven and they'll distribute it, but even when you eat it, you won't be satisfied? The Torah is phrasing that as a curse. It is a curse to not have enough food to feel satisfied and to not have enough food. And even if you have enough food, if you're in the midst of this curse, you won't be satisfied. This lands, if you listen closely, both to the news and to your own soul, this lands so squarely on Hamas for stealing the food aid that had been brought in to Gaza. But it is also clear that there must be a mechanism for feeding people. The Torah understands that the worst curse is not having bread. And I wish us not a simple day, a day of grappling with such incredible and intense commands. A blessing is to have enough and to feel like you have enough. Ve'achalta, you eat, v'savata, and you are satisfied, and then uberachta, and then you can make a bracha. As Rosa writes, power responsibility also means not letting Hamas misuse the food, of course. Of course, the moral responsibility for this entire nightmare of a war falls squarely on Hamas and nowhere else. That's just straightforward. And our tradition calls us, as the rabbis wrote 2,000 years ago, also in Pirkei Avot, B'makom she'ein anashim, in a place where people are not acting like people, tishtadel liot ish, you should be human. And it is clear that people are suffering. We are in pain. Our 58 beloveds have been ripped from us for 592 days. The indignity of that, the horror that they are enduring, the loss of over 1,200 human beings, hundreds of whom just wanted to dance. Nothing should obfuscate that. And the moral responsibility is clear. That's not the point that I'm making. What is our responsibility when we continue to battle the most monstrous part of a people? Hamas is terrorizing Gaza. And it's not that Gazans want to be friends with Israel. That, let's be clear, that's also not a reality, not yet. But we have some power here, and people are hungry. And for all of the clarity of the moral responsibility, which is not ours, the moral responsibility is clearly on the leadership of Hamas that took the calculated risk that attacking Israel on October 7th would be to their benefit and their people would suffer whatever consequences would come. That was an inhuman decision by the leadership in Gaza. But we are 592 days into this, and there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who are terribly hungry. It's not a moral responsibility question when it comes to the technical uses of the word moral or international law. But our Parsha tells us that it is a curse to be hungry. And so I am proud of the work as Arlene is amplifying, which she has been among the greatest leaders of, that we work hard to help people who are suffering of food insecurity and poverty, food pantries with respect and dignity, including giving people the right of self-determination, the very same thing that we are fighting. And so for all of the politics that I know is bubbling up as I say what I'm saying, I'm not questioning who is responsible for this war. I am not minimizing the loss of our beloveds, who we want back in our arms. We will fight. We will fight. We must fight. But you can't be a student of Torah and not feel the hunger of so many people. What do we do with this? So hard to figure out. Compassion for everyone who's in a position of making decisions. Compassion. But also, please, friends, please, when we read this parsha, we shouldn't wish curses on anyone, even in our trauma, even in our anger. Human beings are all created in the image of God. And the Torah in this parsha tells us that hunger is a curse. And Yafa Eliach, in the story that I read a moment ago, tells the story of what people would do for bread in our darkest moments. This parsha tells us also that in our darkest moments, we are not alone. God will be with us. But in this world, friends, we in so many ways are the actualizations of God's best intentions. That's what we're called to be. B'chol drachecha da'ehu. In every way that we walk, we are supposed to increase our own and others' knowledge of God. For me, that means being emissaries not only of fierce justice, which we must be, but also of humanity. So, I see, friends, I see. The responses are coming in. I respect all of them. I'm not making a political judgment. I am speaking from a place of heart and Torah. Hunger is bad. And if we can alleviate it, we must. We must. Not sure quite how, but I have no questions about the fact that we must. So with me, friends, let's take a moment, not to change topic, not changing topic at all, but send your hearts to the east. Pray for our beloveds. Take this breath. Hold it all. And double down on the commitment to being human as we pray for our beloveds to come home. Let's sing. Kol ton baleva פנימה, נפש יהודי הומייה, ולפתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה. עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. Bring them home now. Am Yisrael Chai. See you tomorrow, my friends.